Hi everybody, welcome back to Southfield. Today I wanted to talk about CNW Cabooses in HO scale and what I have on my roster, what I've bought, what I've built, and kind of discuss the lack of available cabooses that are prototypical in HO scale for the CNW. So as any CNW modeler knows that wants to try to actually be prototypical in their cabooses, there are very few offerings from anybody for a completely finished caboose in HO scale that is prototypically correct to the CNW. Walthers has done a pretty decent job recently with their Trainline series as far as the international cabooses, but Athearn has been putting out the same exact caboose for every single road name ever in existence since the blue box days, and probably since even the yellow box days. So 20, 30 years, and it's still the same exact caboose, and all they do is they put CNW on it and put some random numbers on it, and all of a sudden that's supposed to be the correct caboose, which it isn't. So what I've been doing over the past couple of decades is taking some of these cabooses that are actually available and modifying them to be as prototypically correct as possible. And don't get me wrong, this is not going to be 100% prototypically correct caboose, or neither is really any one of the other ones that I have, but within a reasonable amount of effort, I am getting them as reasonably close as possible. So quick background, couple of different caboose styles. One, we've got the Thrall car, and then we've also got the International Caboose Company. I'm sorry, International Car Company. Those are the two different styles of cabooses. Now, the Thrall Company built one style of caboose for the CNW, and the International Car Company built three different styles of cabooses. It would be an early international, a mid international, and a late international. So right here, what we have in front of us, this is an Athearn blue box. Technically, this was a ready-to-roll kit that I bought probably about 10, 15 years ago. And it is factory painted, factory lettered 11157. This is a perfect example of Athearn just kind of, putting a caboose out there just because it's a caboose and you put CNW on it. Now it's a CNW caboose. Now, it isn't. It's not correct. 11157 is a number that would apply to a late international caboose, which this does not in any way, shape, or form look like. So therefore, it's an incorrect number for the car. But if we look at the actual caboose itself, caboose to car body, it kind of looks more like a Thrall caboose, but it's riveted and not welded, so it's not actually that either. So overall, this particular caboose, like I said, this is almost as it came out of the box from an Athearn box, and they're not building anything remotely prototypical. So this falls into my category of cabooses of, it's not a Thrall, it's not an international, it's just a yellow and green caboose that I have removed some of the details from that are 100% not correct. So everybody knows that the Athearn cabooses, they all come with running boards and they all come with ladders to go up to the roof. Well, by the time the CNW had the bay window cabooses in yellow, they never actually had running boards nor ladders that went to the roof, because once they got modernized in the 70s, the running boards got removed off the roof and the ladders got chopped down. And that's when they started getting painted yellow and green. So by the time a CNW caboose got to be yellow and green, it wouldn't have any running boards on the roof. So therefore, when Athearn makes them with the running boards on the roof and the ladders that go up there, you have to remove it. So this caboose retains its original paint on the sides of the car body. The roof has been completely repainted after I removed the running boards and the ladder extensions. The battery boxes have been modified underneath, and I have had to extend, just like you'll see with all of my cabooses, especially the Athearn cars, we've had to extend the roof ends so that you could build custom rails, because with an Athearn blue box caboose, when it comes out of the factory, once again, it has a brake wheel and it has a very basic setup of end rails, which doesn't in any way, shape, or form look like what it's actually supposed to be in real life. So this, let's see if this works here. There we go. The roof ends have been extended so that they would line up with the bulkhead at the bottom. so that I could actually run these custom rails in a vertical position, because the roof ends are actually on a stock Athearn caboose about 0.060 of an inch further back. So therefore, you would end up running at an angle if you wanted to run one of these end rails like this. So I had to end up extending the roof ends, and then along with that, removing the roof rails, filling in the holes for the walkway, and then modifying the ladder that goes up there, and also building the custom end rails. That's brass wire that's soldered together and then painted up. So those are some of the mods that were done to this particular car in order to make it look less like an Athearn Blue Box and more like an actual CNW bay window caboose. Now, like I said, there are still definitely issues with it as far as prototypicalness, but you know, within reason, this is an acceptable, from 5 or 10 feet away, so to say, caboose that only the really high-end prototype modelers wouldn't be able to look at it and say, all right, there's something wrong with, you know, all the details that are on it. So this is also a caboose that has recently benefited from my window screens that I was showing in an earlier video. So this has got the window screens that are made from American Model Builders kit number 225 with vinyl frames, vinyl cut frames. And there is a video in my on my channel showing exactly how I did that on one of the other cabooses. So if you want more information on that, you can go ahead and check that out. Also, the other things that have been done to this caboose is I've modified the stack on it, because it's definitely not correct the way it comes from Athearn. And then I did add over here, technically this would be a toilet vent, even though that isn't actually prototypically correct, but I am not able to find a casting that actually fits in there and looks prototypically correct. So outside of that, 11157, I'm going to call this a Thrall-like caboose, although it isn't really a Thrall, and it definitely isn't an international, even though the number that Athearn put on it is an international, a late international number. So moving on down the road, we are actually going to go to a late international. So 11125. This caboose is a recent modification of mine. So initially, well, I guess initially this caboose started life as, this is a Walthers main line or train line, whatever that line is. And this started life as an actual CNW caboose, but it was red in number 11000. And I wanted to make it a yellow and green caboose, so I went ahead and stripped it down and repainted it. This was done about 9 years ago. I blocked off the window openings, because by the time they were yellow, they didn't have any open windows anymore. They were all blocked off. So this particular caboose is custom painted and custom decaled. So initially, when I did this caboose about 9 years ago, this was actually numbered 11124. And the reason why it was 11124 is because that was the sequence of decals on a micro scale decal set that was available. So I didn't want to individually cut out 11125. 124 was almost in a row, so I just decided to make it easier and do 11124. So 11125, this, besides being custom painted, weathered, and decaled, this is actually exactly as it comes from Walthers. They did a pretty decent job of building a late international caboose for the CNW. The end rails are there. I didn't have to build those. I didn't have to modify the roof, no roof extensions. This was literally take it apart, strip it, block off the windows, paint it, decal it, you know, and call it a day. So overall, they did a very good job on this particular caboose. The only things that I have done to it is, if you pardon my reach here, on the other side of this caboose, I did make some modifications. And those include the battery box, that's down here, and the coupler hangers that are over there. Most of my cabooses have coupler hangers. So 11125 is actually a caboose that was local to Chicago. It was at the Elk Grove yard, even under UP days, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I believe. when that caboose actually burned down, because I think somebody tried to live in it during the winter and make a fire in a stove, and that didn't go well for them. So, but 11125 is a caboose that I've known for a long time as a result of being in Elk Grove. So I wanted to pay homage to that, and that's why initially it was 11124, because it was easier with a decal set. But as of late, I've been making my own decals, and my modeling skills have gotten better. So just in the past couple of months, actually about a month ago, I went ahead and stripped down the 11124 off of it and converted it completely to 11125, so that now, and finally did weathering on the caboose, so that now it is officially one of the two cabooses that I have known for a very long period of time from the local Chicagoland area. 11124T. So this caboose is as delivered from Walthers. It's another late international. This is Walthers paint. This is Walthers everything. All I did is I added a few details to it and weathered it. They did a pretty decent job with this car. This paint scheme on this particular caboose would represent a modernized caboose on the CNW. However, modernized cabooses would have the remainder of the roof walk, the roof walk up on the roof. Walthers didn't go to that great detail to leave the remainder of the roof walk. But overall, besides that, they did a decent job modeling this caboose, and paint decals, they're actually pretty decent on it. So really, all I've done to this caboose was to weather it and add my standard coupler hangers, spare knuckle hangers, and add some train line hoses to it. That was basically all that this caboose needed. Like I said, Walthers did do a pretty decent job on these cabooses. All of them are rolling on KD 33-inch ribbed back wheels, and all of them at this point have the lanterns on the ends right there. Those are actually created from a Western Cullen beacon from Detail Associates or Details West, either one, for the base. And then the lens is an MV lenses, LS30 or LS28, whatever is available. Obviously those are no longer in production, so I have some left over that I stocked up on years ago. So now I'm just adding those to all the cabooses, because that's a big prototype look for a CNW caboose. 11159 is also as painted and delivered by Walthers in that same series of cabooses. This is good solid 12, 13, 14 years ago that I weathered this caboose. I did end up blocking the windows out on this one. The number on this caboose is actually correct for what it is. 11159 is a late international caboose, which is what this car body is. So this is actually correct from Walthers. Like I said, they do a nice job on this. Couple of small details. I've got the spare knuckle hangers and converted the wheels over to KD 33 ribbed back train line hoses. Other than that, just a weather job and blocking off the windows on this one, and it looks really good. So 11010, you might remember this from one of the earlier videos where I was actually talking about how to make the how I was making the caboose windows and the window screens. This caboose I purchased on eBay probably 10, 12, 13 years ago, and you know, it was just absolutely amazing. Whoever built this caboose was a very talented model railroader. He did a fantastic job. This started life as an Ethern Blue Box, you know, one of those cars. He blocked off the windows and completely sanded all the car body sides completely flat, so you can't even tell where the windows used to be. He did the roof extensions on it so that it would line up perfectly vertical for the end rails. He built the end rails on it, modified the battery boxes on it. He modified the bay on it. If you look at the top of the bay, you can see this angle that's on it. So, you know, in the world of prototype CNW cabooses, what does that bay angle at the top really mean? It can mean one of two things. The main thing it means is that that's an international car company caboose. It's not a Thrall caboose. Now, with that, if it's an international car company caboose, you got an early, you got a mid, and you got a late international. And that bay doesn't actually represent an early or a mid. The closest it could represent would be a late international, kind of like 11159 over there, same kind of bay, but there are a lot of differences between the two of these. So the gentleman that did build this one, he made a lot of really good modifications to it, but it is not 100% prototypical, or not really even too close to it. It's a very, very well built caboose. I'm not taking anything away from it, and it actually has been the inspiration for me building my own fleet of cabooses after I bought this one. So, and I've built a lot of cabooses off of the Athearn Blue Box frame as a result of this particular caboose. So 11010 would make this a Thrall caboose based on the number. However, the Thrall caboose would not have a beveled top to the bay window. So, you know, a couple of discrepancies there, but overall, beautiful caboose. He built the end rails himself, and I learned how he did it by just studying how he did it, and I built mine kind of based off of that. Paint job is fantastic, decal job's fantastic. His bay windows and his window screens are terrific, and I've been trying to emulate those for years, and then I just finally recently figured out how I can do it in my way. So, and that's in that other video. He custom built the caboose stack. You can see that. That's not even any kind of commercially available caboose stack, and very, very high quality caboose that was not built by myself. 10854. This is my latest build that was just completed about a month ago. So very long and very interesting story with this caboose. This is actually, I started building this caboose, or a caboose of this nature, about 9 years ago on this exact car body. So as you can see, the top of the bay has been beveled down like an 11010. So that's about the same time I got 11010, and I said, hey, you know what? This guy built this great caboose. I'm gonna build one just like it. So I got this car body. I went ahead and started sanding down the top of the bay to get it beveled so I can make it look like 11010. In the process of doing that, I ended up sanding too far and made a hole in the top of the actual bay itself. So this area right here, you could literally stick this pick inside of it. And by the time that I sanded that hole in that bay, I said, okay, this isn't working, screw it, put it on the shelf. It literally sat there for about the past 9 years. Recently, I've started my caboose craze, and I looked at this car body sitting over there because a lot of other stuff was ready on it. We know that the Athearn car bodies, they come with windows. They have 3 windows on each side, and they are not in this location. These are prototypical to the car body that this car actually is. The Athearn windows are not prototypical at all. So I've already filled those windows, sanded the car body flat. All of that was ready. I had the handrails removed. I already did the roof extensions on it, modified the roof, and after that I went ahead and sanded down the bay and put a hole in the bay and just kind of gave up on that project and sat on a shelf for about 9 years. Recently I looked at it and I said, hell, half the work on this car is already done. Let me see if I can fix the hole in the bay. And in literally 5 minutes it was fixed. So I used glazing putty, automotive glazing putty from Body Work, like I usually do, filled in the hole, sanded it down, and this car basically got a new life. And at that point I just kept going with it. So 10854 is a mid-international caboose. So with a mid-international caboose, I'm sorry, 10854 is an early international caboose. And with an early international caboose, and early and mid-international cabooses, the bottom of the bay, if you can see down here, is also tapered just like the top of the bay. So I ended up experimenting with also glazing putty and creating that taper bevel at the bottom of the bay, and it actually worked out way better than I ever expected it to. So after it worked out that well, I decided to go ahead and continue with this project and actually build an early international caboose, because definitely haven't seen anybody build one of these before for the CNW. So I went ahead and modified the bottom of the bay. I went ahead and created block-offs for where the windows used to be, or would have been, on this caboose in prototype when it was still a red caboose. So when these cabooses were built, they came out in CNW Red, Caboose Red, and at that time they still had windows and roof walks and the ladders that would obviously get you to the roof walk. So when they converted them, when they modernized them, they went ahead and blocked off the windows, and Then they removed all the roof walks. So when the windows were blocked off, they would be left with these block off plates. So I placed these block off plates in the location where on the prototype there used to be windows. So these are actually in the correct location where the windows would have been on this car on the prototype itself. So it's got roof extensions on it. The roof has obviously been modified. The end rails are custom built, it's custom painted, it's custom decaled. Windows are done and custom weathered. We've got the decals, the details, battery boxes modified underneath. Let me flip this around real quick. Show you the other side. So on the A end of these cabooses, they had 3 windows, and on the B end, they had 2 windows. So I did that on this caboose as well, where one side has got 2 window block-off plates and the other side has got 3 window block-off plates as per prototype. I have a lot of underbody details on this caboose. Same KD33 rib back wheels. And I've got the windows modified and the window screens created. This is the caboose that was being shown in my caboose window video. So very happy with the way that this caboose came out. Definitely more interesting than anything else, the fact that this caboose sat on a shelf as an abandoned project for about 9 years, up until just recently. I got into my caboose craze, and as opposed to just getting a fresh blue box car body and starting all over again, I looked at this one and said, hey, you know what, can I fix this hole in the top of the bay? I fixed the hole, and then after that I said, if I really wanted to build a prototype, a prototypically correct one, I need a bevel at the bottom of the bay. Sorry, not a bevel, but a, whatever you want to call that bottom portion of the bay. The fact that it's beveled or angled or whatever it is. So this bay window configuration with the top and the bottom bevel would indicate a early or mid international car from International Car Company. So this is as prototypical as it gets for my caboose fleet. So this is 11135. 11135 is the original SouthField caboose, and by original I mean SouthField version 1. So this current SouthField that we're all standing on looking at these cabooses is SouthField version 4. SouthField version 1 was a 4x8 layout somewhere in the mid-1990s. So this was an Athearn blue box. This was a real blue box back then. It wasn't an RTR. That wasn't a thing. It came in a blue box, and you had to assemble it yourself. And this is the same caboose that ran on SouthField version 1. So it's been sitting on a shelf for a good couple of decades. And the reason for that is because it's an Athearn blue box. So this is exactly how it comes. Well, not really exactly how it comes. This is highly modified. But for the most part, this is how it comes when it comes out of the box. And it's not prototypical to the CNW. And that's the reason why I never really put this caboose out on the layout. And it was just sitting on the shelf as a display piece. And then recently I started thinking about it and said, you know what? Can I come to a consensus, like a compromise here, where I do some things to this caboose to make it look less like an Athearn blue box, but I won't be able to reach proper prototypical correctness of this being a true CNW caboose, because I would have to modify the windows. If I modified the windows, I'd have to repaint it. And I didn't want to repaint it because this is the original paint that ran on SouthField version 1. So I wanted to pay homage to the original caboose from the original train on SouthField 1, so I didn't want to repaint the caboose. If I can't repaint the caboose, I can't block off the windows. If I can't block off the windows, it's going to look like an Athearn blue box. So I went back and forth and kind of reached a compromise with myself where I called this a modernized caboose. So it's in the modernized paint scheme. The decals aren't necessarily correct from Athearn. I did have to end up modifying a couple of things on that, but I couldn't repaint the caboose, so I had to stay within reason. I added extra decals to it, and what I ended up doing is modifying the window, the center window in the bay. As you can see, that's my standard vertical slider, as it should be. I added the end windows to the bay, and then these windows right here, these are the stock locations for the 3 windows that come on an Athearn Blue Box caboose. So what I ended up doing here is using 005 clear styrene with the same cut vinyl window frames. So if we zoom in on this, you can see that it appears that there are window frames that are flush with the car body, and there's glass behind them. So that was a good compromise and about the best that could be done with an Athearn Blue Box without repainting the car body. And I didn't want to obviously repaint it. What I did have to do is I definitely had to repaint the roof. So yes, with 11135, I did have to repaint the roof because I had to modify the roof. In order to make the end rails proper, I had to do the roof extensions. And as a result of having to do the roof extensions, I needed to repaint the whole roof. So I ended up doing a very careful masking to get to retain all the actual yellow paint on the sides of the car body, and then went ahead and repainted the roof. I did decide to keep the roof walk, although I did modify the way that it mounts so it looks a little bit less like a toy, and I did more modifications to the actual ladders that come up to the roof walk as well. I blocked off the windows on the ends of the car body, which that was quite a bear considering the fact that I had to match the paint color to it because I couldn't repaint the whole car. Built the end rails, modified the battery boxes, and all the usual trim. So overall, it's very nice to be able to have the original C&W SouthField Caboose on the layout for the first time in 4 SouthField versions in approximately 20 years or so. So very nice to have this caboose back on the layout. Not prototypical once again, but much better than an Athearn Blue Box and much better than just sitting on the shelf. So 11119 is what I would call the sister caboose to 11125. 11119 is a caboose that was also at the Elk Grove yard with 11125. And 11119 is actually still in service to this day. It does the North Avenue job for the Chicago Tribune Factory Printing Center and a couple other local jobs around the north side of Chicago. I actually see 11119 probably once a week on average when I'm at work. So this caboose also started life as a CNW 11000, the red caboose from Walther's train line or main line, and did the same thing with it, stripped it down, blocked off the windows, burnt prototype, and repainted it in a different shade. And this was actually initially, when it was built, also about 9 years ago, this was actually 11171. So if you watch some of my earlier videos, you'll see 11171 running around the layout. This is 11171. Same reason for that particular number, because that was the sequence of numbers that was easily available in the microscale decal set. So recently, also in this past month, I went ahead and stripped those off, and when I printed my own decals, I went ahead and made 11119 because I wanted to recreate 11119 and 11125 because those are 2 cabooses that I've seen in action for multiple years. And as like I said, 11119 I still see at least once a week on the near north side of Chicago. So just my usual details added to this caboose, and outside of that, just the paint and the decal job. And so with that, I will conclude this video because I'm realizing that it's running very long right now. So give you a quick overview of the Southfield Yard caboose track here with everything that's currently in service on it. There are still 3 cabooses that I'm actively working on right now, and those may be done sometime soon, or it may be another 9 years before I get to those cabooses into the finished state. But that's just the way that I work sometimes. But for the time being, we've got a whole bunch of pretty well prepared, what I think are pretty prototypical C&W cabooses. Thank you for watching.